Hey, how you doing, my electrolytes? How y'all doing today? So we're gonna do a video on Cynthia G. Hey, Cynthia G, welcome back to the Legend of 2012 channel. We missed you. So we're gonna do the video on Independence Day. Black people fighting to maintain white supremacy. All right, let's see what kind of nonsense she has to spew about Independence Day. Roll the intro, guys.
Hey guys, so I wanted to come on here and kind of talk about this white supremacist holiday called 4th of July.
A white supremacist holiday. Like, do you have any historical citation articles for that? Do you? Do you have any citations linking to any historical article that's backing up your claim, or are you just gonna say a claim that's up in thin air and anybody could believe you? Yeah, maybe that's true after all. I'm not gonna look into whether it's not true or not. I'm just gonna believe her because she sounds really good and she knows how to convince me. Like, no, your word's not good enough. I need facts, evidence, an article to back up your claim in the beginning, or else the rest of your argument falls apart.
Um, it's interesting because as you get older, you tend to look at things for what they really are when you become educated on not just the history of this country, but every single holiday that you celebrate, not knowing that it's in celebration of some genocidal maniac and the establishment or the maintenance of white supremacy.
So you're saying when you get older, you look at things, more in perspective. That's fine. But for you to even say it like that, 4th of July is rooted in some white supremacy thing, is completely false. Because I looked it up before this video, and there's no linking connection to 4th of July and white supremacy whatsoever. So I had to prove your claim false. There's no link between 4th of July and white supremacy. I looked it up myself on Google. There is nothing linking it. So your claim that that this thing is rooted in white supremacy, is nonsense. It's complete utter nonsense. And I don't even know why would you put that out there. Would I even say? Would I even look it up on Google and say, my claim is wrong? And you must be fun at parties, right? You must be fun at all the 4th of July parties. Hey, how you doing? Oh no, Cynthia G is here, man. She's gonna talk to us about how this 4th of July party is rooted in white supremacy. Great, the party's ruined. Hey, can you pass me another beer or something? Because I'm gonna need it, with her babbling on and on. But in the end, 4th of July is not rooted in white supremacy. Okay, it's not. You can look it up on Google yourself. It's not rooted in white supremacy.
I've told you guys once before, and I'll say it now, the entire foundation of this country, as you know it, is white supremacy.
I tested your theory, man, and to say the entire country was founded upon white supremacy is utter nonsense. Yes, did slavery happen, and the barbarous slave trade, and civil rights, and people being oppressed in the 60s and stuff? Yes, but that only happened for a chunk, a quarter of the U.S.'s history. But to say the entire country was founded upon white supremacy is utter nonsense. And I like to see your claim to back up your evidence. I like to see your claim. I like to see it. Because there is no such thing as the entire country was based on white supremacy. No, it was maybe a fourth, a chunk that was, yeah, pretty terrible. But to say the entire country was founded upon, no way. No freaking way is that true. And that's most likely a disingenuous thought, and that's a claim out of thin air.
Nothing can deviate from its foundation. What you started it on is how you ultimately will have to maintain it in order to keep it. If you deviate from the foundation, you won't have the infrastructure anymore.
So you're saying that if the U.S. would you claim was started and is all the whole country was started on white supremacy. You can't deviate from that. Like, are you kidding me? Like I said, that claim is already like disingenuous to begin with. The whole country wasn't started on white supremacy. Like I said, it was like a 1/4 of a chunk that was terrible. But to say the entire country was founded on white supremacy is nonsense. And to even put that claim out there and say, oh, you can't deviate from that infrastructure. What infrastructure? The infrastructure that never existed anyway? The infrastructure that you just made up now with your false claim? There is no such infrastructure, madam, and there never will be. Like I said, there was only like 1/4 of a chunk. And like that was terrible, and like the U.S. history that can't be washed away. But to say the entire country was founded upon that infrastructure that you're saying is ridiculous.
And that's what it is with America. Add to that, Caucasoids don't know it how to do anything except be who they are, which is double-minded white supremacists.
You're saying that white people don't know how to be nothing but white supremacists. Like, are you for real right now? So your claim is like that infrastructure, like I said, that didn't begin with. It was like based on white supremacy has trickled over to today in 2017. Are you for real? Is this real life right now? Am I being punked? Where's the cameras? Am I on the camera right now? Do you not know that each generation and each era is different? The white people back then that were terrible are not the same that white people that are today. Okay? People change in due time and different eras. How many times do I have to keep telling you this? Eras change and times change throughout history. Everybody's not the same as they were back then. To even hear that come out of your mouth is ridiculous.
So this is something that Black people need to understand that they are celebrating. We need to understand that, and I get that so many Black people are detached from their ancestors because they want to assimilate fully into whiteness.
What ancestors? Just they're automatically my ancestors because they're the same skin color as me. Aren't you being the racist one right now? I'm not even connected to those ancestors way back then. I'm not even connected to them whatsoever. Okay? And to say, like, we're detached from them is nonsense. We learn about the history back then. Yes, like I said, I'm not going to act like it didn't happen. But things change throughout time and throughout different eras of time in history. And 2017, you rarely even see it happen. Happens like very like on a minuscule level. And to say like, oh, we're detached from our ancestry and assimilating into whiteness is the most stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Let people act how they want to act in society today. And don't tell like all Black people how to act, or they're saying, oh, they're detached from their ancestors, just to guilt trip them into following your stupid narrative.
And since white people don't celebrate African ancestors, a lot of African Americans don't celebrate their African ancestors. But they don't celebrate anything that has to do with Black people.
Like, how do you know this? Or is it just another one of your dubious claims like it's going to be throughout this whole video? Is it going to be another one of those? Have you ever spoken to people like, do you celebrate this? Do you celebrate that? Like, yada, yada, yada. Do you celebrate this? Like, you can ask people. Like, I know you're kind of scared of white people, but go and ask people around, like, where you live. Go and ask people, like, do they celebrate this? Do they celebrate that? Go and ask people. It's not that hard to go talk to people and, like, ask them, do they celebrate this or celebrate that? And if they don't celebrate it, so what? Don't guilt trip them and call them a racist because they didn't celebrate it. Okay? You can't have that, like, dubious claim and, like, that big of a claim, like, a big old sack of claim without, like substantial evidence backing it up, okay?
And yet, you're over here celebrating a holiday that they created basically saying that, which first of all, you're celebrating them tricking your ancestors to fight and help them to keep a country that, number one, they stole at the expense of slaughtering the natives. Then they forced your ancestors into slavery, tricked them, lied to them, and told them that if they fought and helped them to win independence from the British, that they would let them, free them from slavery, and yet that never happened.
How you use like the Native American slaughtering to further your narrative, which that's kind of gross on your part. That's kind of disgusting on your part, because the Native American slaughtering was one of the greatest tragedies in U.S. American history. That's one of the sins I was talking about in U.S. American history that cannot be washed away. I'm not in favor of that, and I condemn that 100%. But those two things were separate incidences that has nothing to do with 4th of July. That has nothing to do with 4th of July. Those two things were separate incidences. And you can't bring those two together to make a cognizant point, okay? You really, really can't. So I'm going to read you some history of like how 4th of July came to be. On July 2nd, the Continental Congress voted in favor of Lee's resolution and the independence. Near a unanimous vote, New York delegation abstained, but it voted affirmatively. That day, John Adams wrote to his wife, Abigail, that July 2nd will be celebrated the succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival, and that the celebration should include pomp, parade, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and eliminations from one continent other. On July 4th, the Continental Congress firmly adopted the Declaration of Independence, which had been written largely by Jefferson. Through the vote for the actual independence that took on July 2nd, from then on became the day that was celebrated as the birth of American independence. So, I don't know where you're getting this, like, oh, this whole battle thing, and, like, the Native American slaughter has to do with the 4th of July. I don't know where you're getting that from, because when I read the history of, like, the 4th of July here, none of that's in here. Those are two separate instances, and you can't bring those two together. You can't, to make a cognizant point. You really, really can't. And as for, the slaves were, like, free. The slaves were freed, like, later on in, like, in American history, so I will refer you to my other video, like, where I discuss that in detail, where the slaves were freed later on in American history. Again, those were separate instances that had nothing to do with 4th of July. So your whole notion that the Native American slaughter, like with the land and all that, and 4th of July, like, you're trying to cram them together into one cohesive point. It doesn't work, because those two things are separate instances in American history, and you can't not put those two together at all. I rather believe the history.com website than believe you, because you have no idea what you're talking about whatsoever, and you get your points from, I don't know where you get your points from. Points from like thin air and just make up things like so people can believe you. People like go maybe like maybe that is like a good like point I'm trying to make. Like, no, that's not. And if you want the full like history like details, I will leave this history link in the description below for you guys to read on like the history of 4th of July, and you will see that what she's trying to say and like trying to mash these things together. See, if you weren't thinking about this like logically or critically, you would think like, oh, she's trying to mash those two together, that makes sense. But if you look things up like separately, those things are separate instances. You can't put them together into one cohesive point. You can't. So she's trying to mash things together so she can confuse people and like get people on the side like, yeah, maybe those two things led up to that certain. Those are two separate instances. Those things are not one and the same. I encourage you to think critically and like logically about this, and where she is like wrong totally. I encourage you to read like this history article. It will be worth your time, and like to see like, yeah, this lady's crazy and she doesn't know what she's talking about whatsoever. In history said, oh, I know like about like history in the country and stuff. No, you don't. You obviously failed history 101.
So that Black people is what you're celebrating. And you can say that you're not, but the reality of it is you are. You can be of the mindset that you're an American citizen, but that Constitution that said you weren't, it hasn't been changed. So ultimately, you're celebrating white supremacy when you celebrate Independence Day in America.
That's your argument? Oh, the Constitution hasn't changed in years and years and years? That's your argument? Or saying, oh, there's white supremacy within 4th of July. Must try to ram it in there somehow. That's your argument? You know the reason the Constitution hasn't changed in years? Because it's an essential, vital part of American history. If you were to change it, it'd be sacrilege to American history. And you'd be changing a big, big, vital part of American history. So that's your main argument here. Oh, the Constitution had years. Therefore, white supremacy in America and 4th of July and stuff. And that's what you're celebrating. Now, you can't just say that kind of thing without any, like, backing up of your claim. You can't say that. Those are ridiculous claims on your part. A bunch of ridiculous claims on your part. And for you to even get the notion, oh, that's what you're celebrating is white supremacy on your part because Constitution hasn't changed in so many years, that's ridiculous. The most ridiculous statement I've ever heard in my professional YouTube career.
This isn't anything that I'm going to celebrate, and really you should disregard all American holidays. A lot of Black people won't, because the reality of it is, I said this before, Black people don't want liberation, they want assimilation.
First of all, that's fine if you don't celebrate like in the American holidays like 4th of July or Veterans Day or anything like that. It's fine. But you're saying for the people that do celebrate these holidays, that like to enjoy like these holidays like with their families and stuff, are contributing like to their own assimilation? What are you talking about? Nobody, just by celebrating this holiday, is contributing to their own assimilation. That's really ridiculous of you to say. No one is contributing to assimilation just by celebrating 4th of July. I don't know where you got that from. You're basically just saying that to guilt trip people into like feeding into your narrative and saying, by celebrating this 4th of July holiday, you're contributing to your own assimilation into white culture. Like, that makes no freaking sense whatsoever. It really makes no sense.
And that's why every action that Black people take in this country, not all, but the vast majority, are moving and taking actions that are conducive to assimilation with whiteness rather than liberation and freedom from oppression.
You can't be this stupid! You can't!
And that's why what we're getting right now is oppression. Keep in mind that the 99.9% of Caucasoids will fight, they will die, and they will kill to maintain white supremacy.
You said 99% of white people are fighting to keep oppression. Where is that happening? Where? Show me where in the world that is happening in 2017. Show me where in the world that is happening. Because as far as I know, it is not happening in 2017. You can't be this dense. You really can't. Look at the world around here. It's not happening in 2017. It's happening at a very minuscule scale. Not on a big scale like you keep saying. Oh my lord. You can't be this disingenuous. You just can't. We don't live under oppression in 2017. We don't. It's not 1950. It's 2017. We don't live under oppression anymore. I think you need like a time warp into 2017 because I think you're stuck under a rock. You're literally stuck under a rock in 19 freaking 50.
They have no problem with the notion of exterminating every single Black person if they have to. Black people, on the other hand, have convinced themselves that they need to look at these Caucasoids as individual, and they don't dare entertain the fact that white supremacy isn't an individual action, it is a group effort.
Where are you living that every single white person was exterminate every single Black person? Where are you living? What time are you stuck in where that is happening? Because in 2017, that is not happening. That is not happening whatsoever. You need to get your head out of the past and get into the present. Because in the present in 2017, that is not happening whatsoever. That isn't. Does racism still exist? Yes. but it's very on like a minuscule level, not an extreme level like you're putting it at. And as far as like the white supremacy thing, like I said, it's very like minuscule level. It's not the big scale that it was like in the past. Okay, we say, oh, white supremacy is still going on, this, and that. It's still going on big, strong. It's that's a ridiculous notion, and you need to stop saying that ridiculous notion because that's not even true at all. You're just exaggerating and like basically lying to your audience and say, "Oh, white supremacy is still big, man. It's still going on like within 2017, even though it's like barely at a minuscule level. It's like a micro white supremacy in 2017. It's not the big thing that it once was. Okay, so you need to stop saying that. Okay."
So you're dealing with two different groups of people who have vastly opposing interests. One of them is saying that they want liberation when they really don't. The other one is fighting and dying to maintain white supremacy.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Where are you living where there's like a war going on one side that wants to maintain white supremacy, the other one wants to be free from oppression and but really doesn't. Where are you living where this struggle and battle that's going on? What are you talking about? You've been playing way too many like video games or like watching too many TV shows. That doesn't happen in reality. It really doesn't. You need to dip your head out of the fantasy land and get back into reality. Because in reality, that doesn't happen. You're just making this up to like entice your audience to say, yeah, maybe that does happen in real life. No, it doesn't happen in real life, okay? That is not happening. There's no ongoing war like... There is no ongoing war like that, okay? For you to even say that is so ridiculous. That gave me a splitting headache.
But let's get into this article. It says slaves and free blacks fought for the Continental and for the British during the Revolutionary War. At Monmouth, African Americans faced each other. That battle did not matter much, nor at the end of the war did it matter much for which side blacks bore arms, at least as it concerned their freedom. Think about how ridiculous this is. You have black people on the British side and black people on the American side fighting for the interest of Caucasoids.
You honestly think they would go to war just to fight for the interest of white people? Are you kidding me? They're fighting for the interest of freedom. Freedom in their countries. They're fighting for their respective countries. Freedom. That's why they went to war. It's not for the interest of the white people. They could care less about that. They were caring about like fighting for freedom for each other's side in their countries. That's why they went to war. They don't go to war to make an impression on people. They could care less. They were going to war to fight for their freedom for their each perspective sides. You disingenuous person.
Now, it doesn't matter to them that they're willing to kill each other to help maintain the interest of Caucasoids. It doesn't matter that they're being brutalized on those plantations, they're being raped, their children are being murdered in front of them. None of that matters. They're still willing to fight against each other in order to maintain white supremacy.
Do you honestly believe that that's why they were fighting? If you honestly and truly believe that, there is something wrong with their head if you honestly and truly believe that they were fighting to maintain white supremacy back then. What are you talking about? They were fighting, like I said, for freedom, for their respective sides, and to help free the slaves later on. Not to maintain white supremacy, is for freedom for their respective sides. That's what they were fighting. They weren't fighting for the interest of like to maintain white supremacy. Do you really think they were going to war for that? Are you kidding me? If you honestly believe this, you're more delusional than I thought. You're really more delusional than I ever thought in the first place.
It seems like nothing has changed because black people are still willing to do that. because there shouldn't be a black person willing to sign up for any American branch of army or military. There should not be one black person doing that. But for some reason, I suspect that the majority of the soldiers are probably black. And you fight for a country to steal other resources, and none of those resources go to you.
So what you're basically saying is, oh, black people shouldn't sign up for like the military, like the army, the navy, the air force. They shouldn't sign up for it because, you know, all the resources they gather over there don't go to them. What are you talking about? And the people that do sign up in the army, the navy, or the air force, I salute you, because that must be the toughest job on earth. And I thank you for your service. I thank you for your service, for fighting for our freedom, because this numbnuts can speak like that. Thank you for fighting for our freedom and for our freedom of speech here in the U.S. That's what I want to say. Thank you. Because this hits close to home to me. Because I have a person that actually was in the army for a while. My father was actually in the army for a while. From 1973 to 2001. He was in the army as a nurse. So that hits personally close home for me. That hits like home for me. And for you to say no black person or any person should sign up for the army because the resources they gather shouldn't go to you, screw you. Seriously, screw you. That is so stupid. So ridiculous. I don't mean to be harsh, but screw you. Because this hits home personally with me. Screw you. And to the troops that are fighting over there right now, I salute you, man. I really, really salute you. And I thank you for your service. Thank you for your service a lot. Because you don't have to go over there. You don't. You choose to go over there. And thank you for making that sacrifice for like our country and keep fighting for our freedom. Thank you so much.
None of those resources benefit your community, but you're willing to go out and slaughter black and brown people once again, to maintain the interest of white supremacy.
Okay, my patience is wearing thin with you. That's not why they go and fight. They go and fight to maintain the freedom here in the U.S. or freedom in this country. It's a sacrifice on their part for this country. They go and fight, man, for freedom here in the U.S. That's why they go and fight. They don't go and fight to maintain the interests of white supremacy. So once again, your point fails. It falls flat on its head again. It falls flat. That's not why they go and fight. Oh, see, all the resources that you get, it doesn't benefit your community. What are you talking about? It doesn't have to. What are you talking about? Seriously, where is your head right now? I don't know where your head is. I kind of know where it is. And I don't want to say it on camera, but I know where it is. I know where it is, and it's deep up there. But that's not why they go and fight. They fight for freedom in this country, and it's a great sacrifice. And once again, I salute all of them that do it, because I know I couldn't do it. I know I couldn't. So thank you to all our troops for everything that you do for like the U.S.
Few American slaves for their service to the rebels were rewarded with liberty, but the operative word is few. For the most part, slaves who fought for the rebels remained the property of their masters. Anglo-Americans were fighting for their freedom, but not for the freedom of their slaves. Those who sided with the British were told more or less that they were manumitted and they would be giving land and self-government. They had a better hope for freedom with the British than they had with the Americans, but the British found it easier to promise liberty and land than to provide them. The Americans did that too. They did that too because, again, foreign or domestic, young or old, male or female, you're dealing with the same demonic entity.
Dealing with the same demonic entity? Are you freaking crazy? You must be crazy, because I have no words for that point whatsoever. I have no words, because that baffled me so much, and I have no response towards that. To say, you're on crazy pills. You must be, because that statement was so crazy. I have no response towards it.
Slaves who departed with the redcoats when the conflict was over were in their new lands, Canada, England, Australia, and Sierra Leone, still treated much as they had been before. So still oppressed, still beaten, still slave. The first wholesale promise from the British of freedom to slaves came just after war was starting. In November 1775, the last royal governor of Virginia, Lord Dumore, having fled Williamsburg for his safety, first to HMS Fowey and then to HMS William, offered freedom to slaves and indentured servants, able and willing to bear arms for the British. There was, however, a catch. Keep in mind, Black people are still doing this today. When they go out and fight other Black and brown people to get and steal resources for Carthagoids, which ultimately helps them to have the capital to maintain white supremacy.
Once again, I will state for the last time, that's not why they go out and fight. They don't go and fight for to maintain white supremacy. That's not where they go and fight. They go and fight to protect the U.S. and to protect the U.S.'s freedom. That's why they go and fight. They don't go and fight to maintain white supremacy. I don't know where you're getting this notion from that they do that, but do you know something that we don't? Because as far as I know, that they don't do that. Not whatsoever. They really, really don't do that. So, I don't know where you're getting this crazy idea from. Maybe that tin foil has starting to seep into your brain a little bit. You might want to take it off every once in a while.
But then when they come back into this country, they're still treated like every other Black person.
No, they're not. What are you talking about? I can't with you. You have nothing but crazy thoughts in your mind. They're not treated like every other single Black person in this country, okay? They're not. I don't know where you're getting that crazy notion from. Where are you getting these thoughts and ideas from? I would like to know, because as far as I know, that does not happen. Not in this reality, not in the next reality, not in the alternate reality, not in the 360 reality, not in any reality in this earth or on another planet or on Pluto. That doesn't happen. You need to understand that doesn't happen.
So unfortunately, nothing has changed with black people. Nothing. You're still willing to do the same things that you were doing before. That's why white supremacy is here, because just like you helped to maintain white supremacy while you were being oppressed by it back then, you're still willing to fight and help maintain white supremacy while you're being oppressed by it now.
I don't know what time you're living in, but you need to get out from under that rock, essentially. Yes, back then, oppression against Black people was horrible. It was horrible. I'm not going to deny that it wasn't horrible. But this is 2017, a different era and a different generation. You understand, that era of time is not the same as this era of time. You need to understand that. Eras change and different generations come through. And this generation in 2017 is not as racist and does not have much white supremacy as you think it does. It's on a minuscule level. How many times do I have to repeat that? It's on a minuscule level, like this much of a level. It's not like the big thing like it once was. It's not. Seriously, you really need to stop treating it like as if it's like big and like rampant throughout society. If it was big and rampant throughout society, people would break into my house right now and break down my door. If it was rampant in society. But you don't see that happening because it's not as rampant as it once was in society. It's very minuscule. It does still happen, yes. But it's in like very like minuscule, like teeny tiny bunch. You see it happen very rarely, okay? Rarely. And when it does happen, I do condemn it. But it happens like this much so rarely. And you make it seem out like it's like everywhere, like a spot on the map. When that's not even true at all whatsoever. It's really not true.
Dunmore's proclamation claimed to slaves owned by rebels, not to slaves held by loyalists. His offers, the realization of an oft-repeated threat, was intended as much to terrify and punish rebels and to furnish himself with more troops. Basically, what he's saying is that this is the equivalent of America saying that slavery has ended except if you're a felon.
You're comparing being a slave and getting arrested for a crime You can't compare the two. One was forced upon you, and you could not say no, or else something horrible would happen to you back then. Really, really horrible. And you're comparing that to getting arrested for a crime because you broke a law that the U.S. has set within their own country. Are you kidding me? You can't even compare the two. One was forced, the other one is because you broke a law and went to jail. You can't compare the two. You really can't. That's like comparing apples to oranges. You can't do that. They're two very different things. They're not the exact same thing. I need you to understand this. They're not the exact same thing.
So it kind of has, but not really. And then the fact of the matter is they hold all the power, so they can just simply turn you into felons, which is what they've done, so that according to their law, they can just go ahead and slave you. Kind of like saying that I have a law that you can't discriminate, but this at-will employment law says that you can fire them for any reason.
So basically what you're trying to convince me is that the U.S. judicial system is turning you into criminals and felons on a whim? What are you talking about? You think they just spray some magical thing in the air that automatically turns people into thieves so they can catch them and fill a quota? I don't know what in the world you're talking about. Seriously, that doesn't happen. The only reason you go to jail or like you become a criminal or a felon is because you break the law that the U.S. has set within the country, my dear. I need you to understand it. That's the only reason you go to jail. And you say jail's like slavery? Not even the same thing. One was forced upon you, like I said, and the other one's because you broke a law within the U.S. that you stated that you will follow, but you ended up breaking it. One was forced upon, the other one because you broke a law. I need you to understand the two. The two are not even comparable. And like that analogy, you say, oh, I have this discrimination law. That means I can fire you even if they don't do anything. That's a terrible analogy to begin with. The only reason a job would fire you or something like that is if you were to steal or you're not doing your job right. It's not because you like your skin color or nothing like that. Like I said, I don't know what time you're living in, but that doesn't happen anymore within the U.S. It doesn't happen. It happens like very like minuscule, but it doesn't happen on like the biggest scale. Like you think that it's happening that. So I don't know where you're getting this notion from.
Or no reason at all. And you don't even have to tell them. Except you can't fire them because they're black, but you don't have to tell them why you fired them, because you can fire them for any reason.
Like I said, like in a previous clip, it's not because of your skin color. It's probably because you're not doing your job right, or you were stealing from the job in the first place. That's not the reason that they would fire you. The only reason they were fired is because you're slowing down productivity, or you're not doing your job right, or you were caught stealing like product from the company. That's the only reason they may fire you. Nowadays, you can't discriminate against someone's skin color. You can't fire them for being black, white, Mexican, or whatever. You can't do that. That's within the U.S. law. You can't discriminate against nobody. You can't do that. You cannot do that. They would be breaking the law if they did. And you could easily say, hey, you're breaking the law if they did fire you for like your skin color and stuff. But that's the only reasons they were fired, like slowing down productivity, you're not doing the job right, or you were caught stealing product from the company. That's the only reason that they were fired. Nothing else more.
So the reality of it is deception is the name of the game. And for some reason, black people are the only ones who don't understand what deception looks like. This is why you still have black people unwilling to look at the fact that white supremacy is something that's maintained by all of them. You have black people talking about their individuals.
Or maybe, just maybe, they're not as crazy as you and they have different opinions and they don't see like white supremacy every single time they turn on Taco Street when they go into their house. Maybe that's just it. Maybe they see like that white supremacy is not as big as it once was, like way back then, and that's on a minuscule level. Maybe they're thinking about it logically and critically. They're not just gonna jump out like with emotion like you and say, oh, white supremacy is everywhere. White supremacy is on every corner of Taco Street that I turn on. Like, no. Maybe they want to think logically and critically about this. They just don't want to jump in with emotion first. That's what you got to do. You can't just jump in with emotion first. You got to think like logically and critically about some things. Yeah, some things require emotion, but Not everything's gonna require emotion. They got to like think about this logically. Maybe they're just thinking about this like critically and logically, and they're seeing like, yeah, like this lady's crazy, and like, what is she talking about? Like, there's white supremacy everywhere. It's not as big a scale that it once was, like way back then. They're thinking about it like logically and stuff, you know. Maybe that's just it. Or you don't like that people think about it critically and logically. You rather them think with their like emotion and think with a tinfoil hat on, like that white supremacy is everywhere in society when it actually isn't. It's maybe on a minuscule level.
Though slavery had been limited in England 3 years before, the Court of King's Bench ruled in 1772 that slaves could not be taken out of the realm of sale. It was still legal and would be until 1834. Nevertheless, the rumor spread in the colonies that slaves had been freed in British, and it proved a powerful magnet for bondsmen. Blacks who answered Dunmore's call suffered hunger, disease, and bombardment. 8 times as many died of sickness as did of battle wounds. So they're sitting here telling you, come fight for us, but we're not even going to treat you appropriately in the process of you training for that fight. We're still going to let you get all these sickness. We're going to let you die. We're not going to feed you. But we do want you to come risk your life. We do want you to do that, though. Sounds real familiar.
What do you mean? Sounds really familiar. What are you saying? Oh, you come risk your life for us. We're not gonna feed you. Like, we're just gonna let you die. Whatever. What do you say? Oh, that exists in 2017. Like, if they go into the military, oh, they're not gonna feed them, not gonna clothe them. They're just gonna let them die of like disease or whatever. What are you talking about? That doesn't exist in 2017. The U.S. military, like, and the soldiers are well taken care of. Like, if they have like a disease or they need to be fed or something. That's why they have U.S. like Army nurses on station. That's why they have them there, so in case like they get like a disease or something like that, they take care of them and like make sure they're all better, and like to get them 100% healthy to go back and for like fight. That's why they have them there, and that's why they have like child stations or mess halls to go and feed the troops, so they make sure they're well fed, like, you know, in their stomachs to like to go and fight. That's doesn't happen anymore, okay? What you're reading in this article doesn't happen in 2017 with the current U.S. military, okay? It does not happen, okay? And for you to even to say that it still happens within 2017 within the U.S. military is a silly notion, and I really wish you wouldn't project like such a disingenuous lie to your audience.
After Yorktown, where for practical purposes the fighting ended 6 years later, they found that their sacrifices would profit them little. Yorktown meant victory for the American cause, but spelled disaster for the enslaved. The Continental, including George Washington's troop, had such a mixture of black and white soldiers that a French staff officer referred to them as speckled. That means the majority of them were black. American combat troops were not integrated as they were in the 1770s and 1780s until the Korean War 170 years later. Free blacks enslaved often enlisted from New England. The first Rhode Island, a majority black unit, was well known. In the South, there were the congressionally approved plan, never realized, to arm and eventually to free 3,000 slaves for service as a military unit for South Carolina and Georgia. Slaves sent to take the place of white owners were commonplace in the ranks, particularly in Southern state militias. British commanders, other than Dunmore, encouraged rebel slaves to run away, and run away they did. The figures are guesstimates, but they are the best we have. Dunmore's promise attracted 800 to 1,000 blacks, about a third of them women, though his proclamation applied only to males. That right there is very telling. That tells you that there were too many black men who wanted to stay on that plantation and be slaves. And there's a lot of women, although a third of them were women who really would have risked their life to be free. That right there is telling, because that right there is same as now. Black men now, more of them, are willing to coon it up, lay up with Caucasoid females, and pander to Caucasoid males.
We're seriously comparing where people were slaves back then, and they still like chose to be slaves like on the plantation, where they were forced to be there by white people. They were forced to be there. And you're comparing it to interracial relationships and people having friends that are white? What are you talking about? If people want to choose to be like with a white girl or something like that, that's their choice. Why should it matter to you? And if people want to have a white person as a friend, why should it matter to you? If people want to have friends of like of any race, it doesn't have to be white, of any race, why should it freaking matter to you? For you to even compare the two is so disingenuous that it pisses me off. You can't even compare the two at all. And for you to even try to jam the two together and compare the two, it's so disingenuous. It's so like facepalm worthy. It's not even funny. You can't really compare the two. Like I said, it's apples and oranges. You can't compare the two. Whatever people do in their lives, in the society in 2017, is their business. Why do you care that they're in an interracial relationship? Why do you care, to be honest? Why do you care who they're with? It's like, oh, look who he's with. Why do you honestly care? That's his business if he wants to do that. Stay your nose out of his business. You really, really need to stop being this disingenuous towards your audience and stop spreading lies. Not what happened back then. No, that's not the lies I'm talking about. The lies like that is comparable to that back then. That's exactly what I mean.
Staying slaves on the plantation as a means of being comfortable rather than fighting for their freedom. In the South, perhaps 80,000 to 100,000 slaves ran to British lines. This says a lot. It really does. It shows how, again, nothing with the mentality of Black people have really changed. We should not be able to look at things in the 1700s that Black people were doing, and still in 2017 they're having the same mindset and still doing the same thing. You cannot progress if you have the same mindset and only want to refer to the same outdated, ineffective non-solutions.
One, like I said, that was a different time, like back then. Yes, Black people were oppressed back then, yes. But for you to say Black people had the same mindset that they have in the 1700s that they have in 2017, that is ridiculous. We have progressed so much over like the eras. Since the 1700s, we have progressed so much. And you're impeding that progress. You're going to halt that progress because you want to be this much of a racist person. And that last part you said, oh, instead in that old mindset and like create a non-effective solution, take your own advice. Take your own advice. Stop thinking in that old mindset and like get into like the new generation. And think with a logical mindset and like actually give people a chance instead of saying you are a racist, you are this, you are that. Get out of that old mindset of like saying that. And like maybe that will be the solution. Where you like to get along with people of different races other than your own. Take your own advice. Don't try to give advice to other people if you have not taken your own advice to begin with.
But let's continue. On June 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed, marking the colonists' independence from Great Britain. But some 75 years later, some Black Americans weren't ready to celebrate. You should never be ready to celebrate this. Let me tell you how much of a walking contradiction most Black people are. Just like back in these times where Frederick Douglass thought he could pretend to be pro-Black while dating the mothers and daughters of their oppressors, you still have Black people to that day, to this day, thinking the very same thing.
Criticizing Frederick Douglass not because he was pro-Black, but because he was dating a white girl. Are you for real right now? What planet am I on right now? Am I on the planet Reverse Town or something where nothing makes sense and like I'm just going crazy? I'm the crazy one here. Am I on that planet right now? Is that what you're criticizing for? You're comparing that to that once again. You can't be serious. Why does it matter who people date? Why do you care? You should not care. I am fed up. Seriously, you shouldn't care who people date. It should not matter. I don't know how you can be this much of a racist and have this large of an audience being this much of a racist. You're impeding progress with you being this racist towards people and not even giving people a chance to speak to you because they're not the race of person that looks just like you. That is silly.
This is how much you never progress. And you can't progress physically if you don't progress mentally. Abolitionist movement leader Frederick Douglass gave a scathing speech the day after Independence Day in 1852, saying, "The 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today?" Douglass reminded listeners that when the Declaration of Independence was signed, many blacks were still slaves, and many black people still are even today.
Once again, I'll say slavery was horrible. And in 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, people were still slaves. Yes, I recognize that. I don't congratulate that whatsoever. And yes, Frederick Douglass had every right, like say, yeah, I need to mourn because like people are still slaves. He had every single right to say that. But for you to say, oh, there's still slavery today, you just had to shoehorn that in there. You had a good thing on. You just had to shoe that horn in there. That slavery is still a thing today. No, it's not. No, it isn't. And for you to even say that slavery is still a thing today, it's silly. Take that tinfoil hat off and go out into the real world and think about this logically. Take that tinfoil hat off every now and then and actually have some cognitive thoughts before you even say that. Slavery does not exist today in this current generation. In 2017, slavery does not exist.
It's just called mass incarceration. Even the British were more likely to offer freedom to blacks than the colonialists. Fast forward to 2012, where many black Americans still remember Douglass' sentiments. This actually should say fast forward to 2017. As one reader of Politico's Playbook writes in the report Mike Allen Thursday, Independence Day is odd for black people. Today, America is a better bet for everybody, but in 1776, most blacks would have been sided with the Brits, and many did. Chris Rock made his feelings known more plainly Wednesday, hours before celebratory fireworks went off across the nation. The comedian wrote, "Happy white people's Independence Day. The slaves weren't free, but I'm sure they enjoyed fireworks."
Yes, back then in 1776, most black people were still slaves. Yes, it was a horrible, horrible time. That is a stain on U.S. history that cannot be washed out. I had to state this for the last time. But that doesn't mean you can't celebrate 4th of July today. It does not mean that. Because the black people that were around today were not born in 1776 when black people were slaves. How many times do I have to state this? The black people that were back then are not the black people of today. Are you kidding me? I cannot believe you cannot see this, how silly it is. And as for that tweet, it's such an idiotic tweet. It's not even funny. It's such an idiotic tweet. Really, really idiotic.
That's still what it is today, to be honest. That's still what it is to be honest. None of these holidays here represent you, black people.
Calm down now and speak rationally. People should celebrate holidays because they want to celebrate holidays, okay? Let people celebrate whatever holidays they want. And don't condemn them. Say, oh, this holiday is not for you because it oppressed black people way back then because it has history of that. Don't say that. Let people celebrate whatever holidays they want. And mind your own business. Celebrate whatever holidays you want and let the next person celebrate whatever holidays they want in society. Let people do that. Because that's our freedom, our choice within society. We can celebrate any holiday that we want. Any holiday we choose not to celebrate. That's fine. Just let people have that choice. Don't force them to not celebrate 4th of July by bringing up like facts from like way back then that don't even connect to now. Okay?
None of these holidays here are meant to honor anybody other than Caucasoid genocidal maniacs. Again, this is just right here confirming that these are the only group of people in history who have no documented history of ever working for anything that they've obtained.
There is no documents for them working not for anything they obtained. Are you kidding me? There's probably several hundred historical documents of white people like working for anything they like obtained or work hard for. Seriously, there's several like hundreds on Google. You can just look it up in 5 minutes. That shouldn't be that hard for you. Just look it up in 5 minutes and there's several hundred documents that proves your theory wrong.
all you ever see is them murdering, slaughtering, and benefiting off of the work of other people. But sadly, they can always find black and brown people to fight to maintain white supremacy.
I'm sorry, I'm allergic to bullshit.
Just like black people were fighting to maintain white supremacy, although they were oppressed back then in the 1700s, they are still fighting to maintain white supremacy, although they are oppressed by it today in 2017. Let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Thank you for your support. I'll see you in the next one.
Oh, my lights, what did we learn today? We learned that Cynthia G is a crazy lady who thinks white supremacy is still around and tries to connect 4th of July to slavery, which even they don't connect whatsoever. They really don't connect. And she's just trying to force like a square peg into like a round hole. So that's going to be it for me, my legends. My Twitter handle should be right here. I am most active on there, and I upload my videos there too. That's going to be it for me, my legends. Have a great day, and remember to stay awesome.